Okay, welcome and good evening, everyone, to Toastmasters District 57 Masterclass. I hope you're all ready to have some fun this evening with Ashley Harkness, who's going to be giving a presentation on putting humor into your speeches. My name is Patricia Dessa. I hail from Rockridge Toastmasters in Oakland. I am the voice behind the tile that says District 57. I am also your host for this evening. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to get started with Ashley in just a few moments. But first, I wanted to go over just a few logistics. This masterclass is being recorded, and the recording link will be available on the District 57 webpage on a subpage for masterclass, and that should be in place by Wednesday at the latest. And I'll share with you the link to that a little bit later. This evening, Ashley is going to do a combination of presentation and questions and answers. He has asked that all questions be put into the chat box, and I will ask those questions at selected times during the hour when he pauses for questions and answers. Throughout this program, all participants will be muted to minimize distractions given the number of participants on this program. I also ask that you be mindful with the chat. And if you are trying to respond to a comment from just one person, if you could respond directly to that person, unless it's something you think everyone could benefit from. I'm going to now stop sharing my screen and ask Ashley if you can queue up your slides while I introduce you.
Okay, I can do that. Let's see.
Ashley Harkness has been a Toastmaster since 1997. He has served in numerous club and district officer and training roles, including District 57's district governor, as it was called then, from 2008 to 2009. He's been a regular presenter for the District 57 Speakers Bureau and keynote speaker at several events. He was a charter member of the Laugh Lovers Cantu Comedy Club, and he tells me that it was the training imparted in that Toastmasters Club that helped him develop skills in humor. He is an award-winning professional conference speaker and has been an electrical industry safety trainer for industrial electricians. Ashley tells me that he grew up telling a lot of jokes, but he has never done stand-up comedy before, which is just as well because there is a key distinction. As we know, stand-up comedy is different from humorous speaking, as opposed to delivering a series of one-liners. Effective use of humor in a speech can open up an audience in the best way, and that's an indirect quote from Ashley. Please, everyone, help me welcome Ashley Harkness.
Oh, thank you very much, and welcome, and hope everything's going well with you. All right, let's get right off to the bat here. In my experience, humor is really something that's very artful. It moves us all along quite well, and we laugh, and we're having a lot of fun. Now, there's no real secret to this humor business. It's just a matter of putting it together, stealing everything you can from anybody else, and then doing the best you can in front of your group. When you're putting it together, you're making something worthwhile for everyone, and they are happy. When the audience laughs, they're more comfortable. They're even more willing to learn. In fact, they're going to be more demanding upon you about giving more humor to them in the future. Now, let's decide on how to do this. We're going to take first a broader approach to this humor business, then we'll get a little more specific about you and your speeches and putting humor into your speeches. For this particular point, let's say that there are a couple of very simple rules. It's very easy. Humor is placed where and when you think it can be done. You will look at some humor help places and use good humor in lots of different aspects, and invariably you will make it seamless to yourself. We'll be delving into some of those places and looking at it, and also where are other things that come along that will matter to you. So that's really kind of cool, and I think you'll find it very effective. You need to get people laughing as soon as you can in your speeches. If your speech comes in and brings a laugh in the first 15 seconds, wow, that is so cool. They start laughing, and once you've got them laughing, they're more than willing to do it again. So one of the tricks you need to do is to take your written script, I hope you have that, and afterwards look at what you saw when you were doing it. write down what worked and what didn't work, and also figure out whether they were really laughing or not and why. Now, do you have a humor helper? Someone that you can go to and say, I want to try this out. Tell me if it's any good. And then you do, and you find out whatever you find out. So don't just have one of them. You need several humor helpers, but there'll be plenty of people who'll be willing to help you out. Now, let's talk about a couple of other simple rules. I get in trouble all the time because I am a punster. I find puns really easy to do. And I've been told, but that's boring. And so I knock it off. I try to, at least. Some people will tell you that's not what happens. Shaggy dog stories. I know you've heard these because everybody's got an old uncle or an old aunt sitting around who wants to tell the story of one. Shaggy dog stories are a long story, but it has to end in a pun. That is a giveaway to it. So I don't do shaggy dog stories. I find that I kind of forget them. One more thing here. You are an amateur at this point, but before this is over, you're going to be a professional. That's what we're going at, a professional in humor. You're going to love it. A truth about humor is simple. Humor, comedians never share their jokes. So if you're going to do it very well, you're just going to have to start to steal them. There's just no doubt about that in my mind. Don't hesitate, because that's a compliment to the originator. Wait till they start stealing your jokes. If you're looking for humor, well, there it is, right there in your television. All of these guys right here, and Trevor Noah, Jay Leno, Jerry Seinfeld, they all started out just like you. And they all found great humor to put them in the sky. So you can go with that too. Now, humor also comes up ubiquitously. I love that word. It's a 55-cent word, but it really is worth only about a quarter nowadays. In any event, if you go to the internet and start looking up jokes, you're going to have a tidal wave of them coming over. So don't worry, just have fun with it. There's plenty out there for you to work with. Now we have to talk about a serious subject, survival. Yes, 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 you'll get in front of people and no, they won't laugh. I'm sorry, that happens, but you will absolutely not die. No way. Tomorrow comes, the sun gets up, you'll be with it, and no matter how tough the audience, you are the brave person who got up on the stage. That's something very important. Even if you go back having fallen flat, you'll get right back up there, because I'll tell you something, once you get that in your blood, you'll never want it to get out. Okay, so what does humor look like? And where do you put it? How? Well, it's very simple. It's just a part of your speech. It's a part of what you do. Now, you can do it immediately with the first thing you open with, or do it as an anecdote later on, or even at the end of, let's say, your first paragraph. In my experiences, I've done it in lots of different ways. And I found in some audiences it works. I mean, that's the experience. So let's get started with that. Your first paragraph is going to be the key that opens it up. If you can hold your people during that time, you've got it. In that first 15 seconds, your audience, if they start to laugh, you own them. You may take more time to do it, and that's okay, because really whatever works, works. And that's what you need to do. Okay, I know you're worrying. You're thinking, but I'm not funny. Well, I've already been told that I'm not funny. One of the big humor guys in San Francisco literally looked at me right in the eye and said, but Ashley, you're not funny. Don't worry about it. You'll be surprised every time you get a laugh, especially on the times you didn't think it is. And no, everyone will laugh, I guarantee it. Sometimes it takes a little while, but then we'll get to that. Now, your next question is, if they don't laugh, will they get mad and will they hate you? The answer is no. They will not hate you. The only person who will hate you will be your dog that you left at home alone when you came out to be a humorist or give a speech. But I wouldn't worry about that too, just give them some food. As far as humiliation, nah, come on. Remember, I told you, you're the one who got up on the stage. In my first icebreaker, I got up in front of the group and I had no idea. I said a speech They laughed at something. I really don't remember what it was, but I've been here for 23 years because of that. Once you're hooked, you're hooked. Don't flee the stage. Stay up there because you'll eventually want to go back, and you might as well. Now, there are a couple of things that are rules, and that is never apologize. If somebody says, oh, it didn't work, don't worry about it. Just keep going on. Never say, well, that did not work. You hear that on the networks. That's no good. That sets the audience off. Don't sink to the level of the audience if they start giving you all kinds of banter, because sometimes you can use it to your advantage. Be careful, of course, but that's all right. And finally, never argue with a drunk. If you've got someone in your audience that's obviously not in their control, don't argue with them. You can't win. You just kind of have to move on. And that's what we're going to move on to right now. Before we get into the next parts, which is basically the story, anybody got any questions? You might want to put them in the chat and we'll talk about them. This is where I say no questions. That's moving on.
Well, we don't have any questions yet, but I'll use this time as a reminder to just remind folks to please put their questions in the chat box.
Okay, questions in the chat box. All right. All right. Well, your story is really the meat of what's going on. And in your speeches in Toastmastering, you usually are telling some kind of a story. So we need to look at several of the mechanics of humor and how you can weave them into it. First of all, you know from your previous work, or you're just getting into it, there are 3 general sections that we're going to cover. The story that you're creating, how the delivery is and what goes on there. And finally, yes, we're going to talk a little bit more about survival because that's a very important part of this. And I've got some things that might help you with that.
Ashley.
Yes.
Before you move on, there's a question in the chat box. Do you sometimes write your own jokes? And do you want to talk about that process?
I write jokes occasionally. And yes, I try them out on different people. They don't necessarily always make it into my speeches because an awful lot of times the humor that I get from the speeches I already programmed in, and I'm too scared to go out and do stand-up because they'll hate me. Not. So the answer is I write some jokes, but usually I'm not writing a joke book. Does that help you out? Okay.
Yeah, and we've got a couple other questions maybe you want to take before you move on?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
A question about the engaging humor pathway, and do you find that that's helpful for learning humor tactics in the Pathways program?
Absolutely. The Pathways program is very good, well put together, and I've been into it. In fact, I would highly recommend it. It's a great place to start. It's going to give you a lot of experience and skills and take you into different places that are good to go. So I would say, yes, do that. Also, if you have some of the old advanced manuals, they're handy too. You can always find something useful there. But the key is get as much as you can. There are other resources that will help you. I hope that answers that question.
Ashley, what about laughing at your own humor? Do you recommend that?
No. In fact, that is something I'm going to bring up a little bit later on. That's a good way to kill an audience real fast. So don't do that. If you can't help laughing at your own humor, go into your dressing room, go into the men's room, the women's room, I don't know, laugh there, come out, be straight, and give it straight up. It really works a lot better. Anything else?
One other question that I see here, I've heard fish out of water works as a humor technique. What are other techniques that are effective? Fish out of water does work, yes. Let me show you a couple as we go along, and I hope maybe you'll find the answer to that as we move forward. How's that? Great, let's move forward. If that doesn't work, we'll come back to it. Okay. All right. Your speech basically works on the opening body and the conclusion. And basic to this is your experiences in life. Plus in Toastmasters, hence all the normal rules that you've had about putting together gestures and things like that, they all still apply. You want to use them because they're natural to you now, whether you're using stage or whatever it is. I like to add anecdotes because they're nice to have. They're like a little small story, but not really long. It depends on what you do with them. Now, you probably have several of them. In fact, one of my speeches
that I have, which is about, I titled it Why I Do Not Hate Cats, is basically 3 anecdotes to describe an improbable and an actually impossible attribute to cats. Could you believe that cats are brave and loving and giving to you? Nah, but I get a lot of laughs out of that speech. In any event, the speech has been successful because it's from me and from the experiences I've had. You'll find the same thing. Now, you definitely want to leave them laughing. That is the key to it. So at the end of in the conclusion, that's your big finish. So let's go on. I want to tell you a little bit about anecdotes. They're short biographical things that can be interesting. And one of the things that you've got to be very careful of is to make sure that they are appropriate to the audience. Very much so. So this means that you're going to be considering the age of the people, whether it's what the ratio is of men and women, what their occupations are. Certainly, if you're talking about something political, you want to look at that. And the education must fit the audience. So you want to be talking to them directly. Make sure that it's appropriate, and you'll be on your way. So let's talk some more about the story. The opening is where you warm them up. They're sitting there anxiously waiting for you to take them on a journey. That's your job. So do it. It's very easy. It can be an anecdote or another part of the opening if you want, but there should be 3 things in there that you do. You use it to catch the audience's attention. First of all, make them comfortable, and then create the place where they can have a positive response. So I want to tell you about one that I did, just because it's something that I want to tell you. I was in Boston giving a presentation in front of a whole bunch of senior businessmen. They were all electrical engineers and men who had come up through the ranks. Okay, the topic was training today's electrical workers. Well, it was an unsettling and difficult subject for these people. But as an opener, I offered this story. It's a different world out there today. These kids that we are hiring eat, work, and live in a different world. It's a world dominated by a cell phone. They really can't think of anything else. Oh, hey, by the way, all of you, show me your flashlights. And in just a few seconds, I was being bombarded with a huge amount of lights that were going right in front of me. I was blinded. And I said, you know, the fact is, in your hand is a machine that has dictionaries, word processing. It has movies. It has everything somebody would want as a distraction in life, a wealth of knowledge. How can we hope to compete with that? Are we ready for the challenge of actually training them? Now, please turn off the cell phone flashlights. And as I did, and they turned it off, I said, thank you. Mr. Everready, incidentally, is turning over in his grave. They roared with laughter. It had nothing to do with what I just said, but I took them back to an old technology, batteries and flashlights, not cell phones. And it worked. You're just never going to be surprised what does work until you try it. And give yourself a chance to do that. I ended it with that quip because I knew that the illusion of the flashlight would have impact on that audience. They would immediately go, oh yeah, I hate this bloody thing, but a flashlight? Man, I got 5 of them in my truck. Okay. The purpose of humor is basically we want to hook up with our audience. You know, when I gave you the idea of the analogy with the training with today's youth, the audience was suffering from those kinds of things. They didn't know what to do. Many of them probably had teenagers at home. I've already been through that. Thank you. The difficulties of trying to teach current work values to current people from an old-fashioned point of view, you can see where that is. And I used the flashlight as something to overcome the hostility in the audience that might be still there from their inability to make this work. Okay, I was challenged by an audience member. And another place I went to, they asked me, said, well, are you going to be as boring as the last guy your company sent here? This is true, it happened. And I said, well, you're going to just have to stick around and see what I do. I was just doing safety training at that particular point. So what I did was I grabbed one of their supervisors who was in the room, and I said, I need you to lay down on the ground over here because you're the person who got shocked. And now you, the worker, come over here and act like a supervisor and go over and do what he would do normally to you if you were laying on the ground. So you know what he did, don't you? He walked over and kicked him and said, get up, you lazy guy. The place broke up. It was humor that they hadn't expected. Even the supervisor, when he got up, he said, that changed my point of view. And that's the key here. Humor makes a point, and humor makes an impression. The people will remember you for it. They may even call you back. That's cool. As an opener, this is a great place to put your humor because you have a chance to really make everybody comfortable catching their attention. And you'll get a positive response because they're expecting you to make them feel good at the get-go to make it happen. So when you're selecting your opener, consider this. We've already talked about the things like who's in the audience. Now let's talk about relevance to the speech topic. Whatever you're talking about to these people in the audience, they have come for a reason and they want to see what you have to say. But at the same time, they wish to be, well, they may not say this, they want to be entertained. They want to see a smiling face. They want to come away with something that they're going to remember, even if it's not a jingle that will stick in their mind. So the humor has to be clear and identifiable. That means you may have to use techniques like pauses and stuff like that. And I love anecdotes because that is really cool. But stay away from the shaggy dog stories. They will not work. Keep it simple. Keep it simple and keep it straight. Now, humor will move the speech along because the next thing you're going to be doing is building the body of the speech. This is where you kind of give them the meat of what you have. Doesn't mean you get away from the idea of humor. It works there too. You use it to to maintain momentum. Another part of it is you can use what's called a callback. Now, a callback is very simple. You're going to repeat a phrase from something earlier, and they're going to say, "Oh yeah, that refreshes their mind." And it reconnects them to the theme through the speech. It reminds them of the humor content and keeps them going. So before we get into the setup, does anybody else have any more questions?
Yes, we do actually have some more questions. So first of all, just a continuation of one of the last questions. Can you explain what fish out of water is?
A fish out of water is, well, you know, when a fish is swimming in water, that's their home. But if you throw the fish up on the beach, the fish is flopping around and unable to do what they can do. They can't live, actually. And that's the analogy that's being created with the fish out of water. You get up on the stage and you expect to tell jokes about, I don't know, maybe fishing, and all these people are all duck hunters. It doesn't work. That's what happens. You have to be careful about what audience you get in front of. The key is looking at, from my perspective, is looking at who you're going to be speaking in front of and how easily it's going to be to entertain them. You can start out with lots of things to set that up, but you are not the fish out of water because you're the one up there doing the entertaining and you've already done all your homework. Does that answer your question?
I'm going to assume yes, since they can't speak.
It still has their hook in their mouth, I can tell.
Can't unmute. We do have another question. You had said earlier, Ashley, that there are other resources to find jokes. What are those resources?
Okay, can you hold off on that because I'm going to be showing those to you in a minute. I showed you the TV people, but I've got some other things too. There's a couple of resources that I have coming up that will be helpful in that area, and you may want to take that down. Okay, anything else?
Yeah, there was a question about what about timing when using humor? How does it affect a speech?
This is where the practice is very important because, as you'll hear in a minute, people have a tendency to give a humorous speech, and when they get to the humor points, they just kind of give it and then move on. There's a point where you have to let the audience hear the speech, hear the humor, and react to it. And we'll talk about that also in a minute. You know, do you notice what I'm doing? I'm promising you what's going to come next so you don't go away. Great old technique. All right, let's move on. Because The humor elements that we're dealing with here basically are pretty simple. There's only 3 parts. We're going to be looking at those, and I'm going to use a couple of characters from the San Francisco Chronicle in their comic section to kind of give you an idea with that. So let's talk about these particular parts. And this will be an example of how you can make the delivery. So go with me, and I hope I picked the right cartoon for you. So here we are. Dagwood is watching the television and not paying attention to Elmo, the visiting neighbor boy, who's on the floor fooling around with a toy. Elmo is describing his coming summer vacation to Dagwood. As you can see, Dagwood is totally engrossed on the TV. This is called a setup, because now we know that Elmo is talking about going to summer camp. So let's see what happens. In the pause, Dagwood turns away from the TV and says, well, what about your dad? This is the pause because this is a break from, we're not dealing with Elmo now, we're dealing with something else. There's nothing funny here. But the reader has already formed in their mind an idea of what Elmo's coming response will be. The author of this is counting on that, because then comes the punchline. And your response is not right. Elmo's response is very unexpected. She wants him to go too. This is the twist. This is the payoff. And this is where, if you look at Dagwood's expression to the audience, he's staring out at you, it says it all. The point here is that it's very simple to put those kinds of things together for you in your presentations. We'll move into that in another part of it. Have you ever seen somebody on the stage interviewing someone and then they turn away and they're bored? Really, this guy over here, Trini Lopez, is so much into himself. And while the musician is bragging, you get the idea that the comedian is not buying it. This is a reaction shot, and it works because they've seen him do this before. They know it's his trademark, and it works. It creates the twist that happens. There's another part of this, and that's called the punch word. The punch word is creating the humor in a very interesting way because it's doing it without even saying anything. Let's see how that works. You got the birds on the wire, and the punch word in this is what creates the twist or the humor. Because what is Wi-Fi? It's wireless. You didn't need me to explain that to you, did you? No, the idea is that you can see that they can do it in a very interesting way. And you can do this too. You, by leaving things out and let the audience fill it in, you get them to participate and anticipate, and then you get a chance to change the direction and give them the hook, give them the final. Lastly, and here we go with what's called the final pause. And it comes in after your punchline. You need to take 2 breaths, breathe, let them get it, because it frustrates the audience when you give the punchline and then just go right on. Don't do that. Some believe that this shows uncertainty and lack of confidence, and they may start backing up on you, and don't do that. The final pause works in any laughter moment, and you don't have to do anything but go, really, that'll happen. Let them laugh and reset for your next move. Okay, so let the audience laugh and off you go. All right. Humor in the closing of the speech is a really important key to having people remember you. Many audiences remembered what you first said and what you last said. You've seen this before. And as the curtain closes, you want to exit with a flair, because this is a moment that you can catch them and hold them. When they're walking out from whatever the meeting is saying, wow, that was a terrific joke. I got to go home and tell my wife, or I got to bring that to work on Monday. The point being is that your closing is really the key. You've already held the audience. You got the message out you want, and now you want them to remember it. Absolutely remember it. And actually, at one particular time, I was giving a presentation to a bunch of people who were, believe it or not, were inspectors of boilers, boiler inspectors. And I said to them, I said, yeah, well, I'll tell you what, guys, now that we're getting near the end, I want to remind you of something. Yeah, I know that you're in businesses and there's times when some of these new green engineers come and knock on your door and want to come to work. Just remember, you're the guys that are going to have to teach them what real work is. It didn't take much before they all started to laugh because they could all see themselves in the same situation. And that was the end of my speech. Great closing, I thought. All right, let's talk about humor material, and we're going to get to the point where you find where you can get more of it. Well, it's everywhere. Anecdotes for sure. The stories your mother and your father's told you, or what you heard your grandparents' knees, whatever. You'll recover those and use them in your daily life, and you'll make humor out of them because that's what you really have learned about all this stuff. Good gravy, they were right. As Mark Twain said, gosh, at 19, my dad was pretty dumb. At 21, I was surprised how smart he'd become. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. A story about yourself is usually always safe, in most cases. So making yourself the butt of the humor, well, so what? That's cool. And you're safe because you're not going after anybody else. But be careful about spouse jokes. They can backfire on you in a New York second, and I'll tell you, there's no recovery from that. So I try to stay away from them. I like to tell jokes that makes my wife the hero and me the dummy. But I got told one time, leave those alone. And after that, I realized it's a new world and I have to adapt. So be careful of spouse jokes. Your experiences are the important parts. This is where you can reach back into your mind and say, hey, I know something that's really kind of cool. Hey, I know I can talk about bikes. Here's a short, quick story about bikes. I spent a lot of time in Japan and in Tokyo, and I was let go by my translators, and I would wander the streets, and I noticed something very unusual. I noticed that people were riding bicycles with flat tires. I didn't understand that. They were literally going by all over the place on flat tires. And I went past a bicycle shop where the guy had actually put an air compressor with a service hose outside for people to use, and nobody did. It reminded me once of my first time that I tried to ride my sister's bicycle, which she told me I was to never touch. Has anybody done a thing like that before? Done something that your sister or your brother said not to do? Stay out of my room kind of thing. And I got on the bicycle and I took off, and the tires were flat. And I realized that probably everybody in Tokyo who was riding flat tires had been told not to ride their bikes. Is that possible? I don't know. Is that funny? Who knows? To me, I thought it was hilarious because it reminded me of something. And boy, was my sister mad at me when she found out I rode her bike. Oh, by the way, riding a bicycle on flat tires ruins the tires and the rim, so don't do it. There's lots of other things you can do. As you can see, there's a list here of hiking, driving. How many of you have had driver's lessons? Okay, and cooking. Now, as other resources, there's lots of them. I like joke books. There's lots and lots of fun. I particularly like the Reader's Digest because all their jokes are very easy to use. You can identify with them. Some of them are actually jokes, one-liners. Some of them are small stories. We take the Parade magazine. They always have something in there. And the comic strips in the papers, well, that's cool. My advice is to cut them out and keep them. Mount them on a 3x5 card and keep them. Every person who is going to do humor has a humor book. They may say they don't, but they do. And it's from this that they get their materials. Oh, it'll pay off big dividends, I can guarantee you. Well, maybe you want to follow a specific theme or a subject to make a point. Well, there's lots of them around. Reader's Digest has one about humor in uniform. Now, these aren't all one-liners, and they aren't all one stories, one long story, but they've got a lot of different viewpoints on it from a lot of different, and you might find that this could be something adaptable to your audience. You're going to find you probably have some veterans in the audience, and they may appreciate that. there's another part here, and that is, are you telling things that are true or imaginary? You never have to explain that. So as a result, you're free to exaggerate as much as you want. So much humor is that. I consider that sauce for the goose, because let's face it, your job up there when you're using humor is to get them laughing. And anyway, who's going to know? You're not going to say, I'm making this up. No, I never make up my stories. Never. Okay, so let's move on. Remember the usual tricks. You know how to visualize the audience. You know how to get them to visualize your point. Do it. As far as all of your speaking tricks, every one of them will come into play. Everything, stage usage, gestures, movement. The other things where the speeches you're making, yes, you're giving a speech. And of course, you may even use something that has like a sight gag. For my I don't hate cats speech at the end, I pulled out and said, I really do love cats. And I pulled out a little tiny cat and I had that in my hand. I've used that cat as a prop many, many times in different places. So these usual tricks are still for you there, and they need no explanation. You can pull them out and use them anytime you want. When you're dealing with comedy, you might get a comedy buddy, and that comedy buddy is going to help you. I like Judy Carter's book, and I say, try it out. You never can tell. There are several things in here that she talks about in terms of how another person can give you feedback. She gets big into stand-up too, and I'm not really pushing stand-up, but you never can tell. Practice is absolutely crucial. You must be practicing your material so that you know it seamlessly. That means try it several times. It's okay. Bore everybody in your family. Bore the people at work. Practice with the people on the bus if we are ever allowed to ride buses again. You never can tell. So that's important. The next thing is make sure, as I said earlier, I alluded to this, make sure you track what worked and what didn't work. That's because if you try out the same thing that's not bringing laughs, I usually give it 3 shots. If it doesn't work, it's off the script. It's out of there. If it works, I want to know how well it worked. Maybe I didn't set it up properly, or the joke in front of it or the story in front of it wasn't quite proper for it. So I'll work those over again. I have a lot of speeches where I put this in, and I've had a lot of practice doing that. You will too. Remember, your audience will laugh, and sometimes they'll give you the, or sometimes they'll just go crazy. Ah! You need to capture those jokes. Don't expect they're always going to work that way, but the key is you've got an idea of what does work. Do it immediately. Don't wait, because you'll forget about it, especially when everybody's up there patting you on the back and saying, oh, that was so funny. And that it was going to happen. That's going to do it. Some humor mistakes that are out there. Well, there's lots of reasons why sometimes you make a mistake, but one of them is simply don't laugh at your own joke. That's the best way to kill the humor, because the people go, wait a minute, he's laughing. I don't see what's funny. What am I missing? What's going on here? And that's it. You've lost your audience. Getting them back will be tough. Don't laugh at your own joke. You already know it's funny. You want them to figure it out. And don't go up there, okay, it's coming. Here comes the punchline. Are you ready for it? If you've ever seen a humorist or somebody trying to do stand-up bullying this on you, it's time to change the channel as far as I'm concerned. And lastly, if it doesn't work, if you have a bad situation, nobody laughs. They roll you off the stage. Get out of here. Don't worry about it. Bum audience. You'll get a better one next time. Remember, it is a learning skill. Don't lose confidence. Remember, Rome was not built in a day, and this humor skill takes just about as long to make it work. Okay, what happens if they don't laugh? Are there any reasons? You bet there are. And here they are. Maybe you picked the wrong audience. Do your homework. Know who it is you're in front of, because that's an important part of it. If the audience is inattentive, maybe they're distracted. It could be because the room is too cold or hot, or somebody slammed a door or something like that. That happens. In fact, a speaker that I'd known for many, many years, several years ago, told me that he went out on stage, and as he was about to get his presentation, all the lights went out. And the audience went, what do we do next? And he said, I'm still going to give you my speech. And he did in the dark, and they applauded him. It was great. The other thing is that if someone blurts out something in the audience, like your punchline, say, oh, thank you very much. I was hoping someone would get that. In other words, all right, I'll forgive you for that, because if they blurt it out, thank them. You can fix it and do it better next time. And you won't have those kinds of people that often. Again, if they're drinking, bets are off. Okay. More about it. What if they don't laugh? Keep calm. Don't slouch down and show that you lost and you're giving up and run away. Don't do that. Continue on as if the humor had in fact worked. Just continue on. In fact, you might even pretend that it was supposed to be serious. Keep going. It's okay. The audience expects you to be the professional, and that's what you're going to be. It's a very important point. So we're getting near the end here, and I'm going to have to ask you a couple of questions. Anybody got any questions for me?
Yeah, there are a couple. This one was from a little bit earlier, but can you advise on using humor in dramatic or emotional speeches?
If you look at the Shakespeare play Hamlet, there's humor in there. Certainly, it's not direct humor. He brings in some characters that are kind of foolish, and they're not part of Hamlet and his problems, but it is a relief. As you know, in any kind of a serious speech, the speaker's objective is to communicate a message. But if the speech is totally down, 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 people will turn away. They'll even get up and leave the room. So what you have to do is you have to give them the down message and then bring them back up. You have to give them part of the down message and bring them back up. And this is what Shakespeare used. His character was named Polonius, and this guy was coming in, and he was like the old uncle that was always spouting stuff that nobody would listen to. My point is that he was the comedic break, and you need to think about how you can do that. Sometimes it's where you say, I simply didn't understand this, and I had to have somebody explain this issue to me, and they said, you're pretty stupid, and I had to agree with them until I realized that I wasn't. Then people will go, wow, yeah. You know, take them up, take them down. They expect you to be in control. So be in control. All right. Another question?
I'll just encourage people to put questions in the chat box. But actually, I have one comment and one question myself. So the comment is, it's interesting that while this presentation is more about how to use humor in your speeches when you're the presenter, you've also hinted at how to be a good audience member. And that is by being attentive and not distracted, and also not yelling out the punchline. So those were a couple of tips that I'm going to be thinking about when I'm watching another speaker, especially if they're trying to interject humor in their speeches. And then the question that I had was, actually, I'm going to go to the participants. I see another question come in here. Is what about the use? What do you think of the use of foul language, of humor and shock value? What are your thoughts?
Well, we have really allowed that to be a part of our culture, and I hear it a lot, especially on TV when I'm watching the humor shows. I understand what they're doing, and I understand that the comedians use it as a tool. I do not. In fact, in the audiences I'm in front of, I have had people come up to me and they say, you know, Mr. Harkness, you used the word "grave" once too many times. And I think you know the word I'm saying. The point was that you never can tell in the vast number of people in an audience who is going to take great umbrage to what you said and meet you in the parking lot later on to explain it to you. So my point is, leave it alone. If you're in a place where it's common and it's okay, well then, you know, when in Rome, do as the Romans. When in the comedy club, and do as the comedy club. But from my perspective, clean humor is always something you can go anywhere with. It's one of the reasons I happen to like the Reader's Digest. Everything in there has been clean that I've ever found. So that's my recommendation. Other people have to find their own way in this, and I'm sure they will.
Thanks, Ashley. And my question that I was going to ask was, you talked a moment ago about you yourself being the butt of a joke, but When can self-deprecating humor get to be too much, and when does that happen?
That's a real good question. How many of you have gone to put salt on your meal and found out you put too much and it ruined it? It's like that in humor. Self-deprecating humor can work, but if you start using it too much, you look like Woody Allen. And Woody Allen built a whole career on doing that. That isn't necessarily what you want to do. Remember, your humor is to uplift the audience. If you start getting after yourself too much, they go, maybe if he doesn't think that good of himself, I wonder what he really thinks about us. You create a situation in the audience's mind that is not where you want it to go. You want them to follow your message, which is your speech, and you want the humor to keep them alive and well as you go through it. So be very careful with that. Also, if you do something that is self-deprecating and it works, don't necessarily do it again. You've had your shot. And if it doesn't work, well, that's life's lesson, and that's what humor is about. That audience out there is individuals, all different, walks of life, everything. So you want to kind of hit the general. Does that help?
I'm going to assume yes when you ask that, unless somebody chats in for some elaboration. Ashley, did you want to take more questions? Because there are more.
If there are, I'll happily take them. We still have a little bit of time. Sure.
Okay, great. Do you use or enjoy using physical humor or find it effective?
Physical humor in the sense, if you have guys who are like slapstick and they fall down, no, I don't do that. I fell down 2 years ago and broke my arm, and I learned a lesson. Don't do that. That wasn't humorous, incidentally, and it wasn't intentional. But there are times when I might use something to show, I might even do something, let the audience imagine what I have in my hands, and I will describe it. I may talk about how my beautiful little tuxedo black and white kitty, and she's purring to me, and I love it. Oh, isn't it wonderful? But be careful, because audiences, half of them are dog lovers and they hate cats. So, you have to be careful with that. But physical, sure. I get physical whenever I need to. You've seen people do that. I've even stood on chairs to show that I actually had height. I'd never laid down on a stage and acted like I was going to sleep or I was dead or something like that, although I have seen in the international speech contests people do that sometimes. But it becomes a part of what your humor body tells you will work or not. I do believe in choreography. I believe that you need to have someone in your group tell you about whether the movement to the left or the right or the bending down works or doesn't work, or what you need to do. In Rich Hopkins' presentation, he was an international second place winner one year. He told us in a meeting later on, he said, I was explaining in the speech how the smoke was going up out of the chimney of this house. And one of the other international speech winners said, no, don't do it that way. Show it, the smoke curling up out of the chimney. Sometimes those little tiny details, not heralded by speaking about them, but they can affect the image that the audience has, because they're responding to you with sight, sound, everything. Got another one?
Yes, here's one that I personally am very interested in hearing the answer to. Is it okay to make jokes about my culture and stereotypes? Well, my own culture and stereotypes.
Well, all right. In the movie The Godfather, you saw the wedding, and it was an Italian wedding, and all these guys were getting up and they were telling jokes in Italian. I had an Italian neighbor who came over and explained to me what the guy was saying. He said, that stuff can't go anywhere. That's why they had it in Italian. In that particular setting, okay, I guess you can get away with it. Again, you have to know where you're at and what you're doing. I myself am very careful about cultural jokes. However, we have a moment, so I'm going to give you one. I was in Japan. I was at a lunch with the business manager from the company we were working for, and there were a whole bunch of Japanese around with me. I was the only American. And the manager, his name was Ishii, said to me in English, Ashley-san, please tell me an American joke. And so I did. I don't remember what it was, but I do remember that not anybody laughed. until my translator, George Sakai, sitting next to me, he said in Japanese to them, Ashley just told a joke, laugh. And then they broke out and laughed. So when we were leaving, George says, you know, we're coming back here in a month. I said, yeah. He says, you better be ready. A month later, repeat of the lunch. There's Mr. Ishii sitting across from me. And he says, oh, Ashley-san, tell me an American joke. So I told him a joke. And they all broke out laughing. One of them almost fell out of his chair and knocked over his noodles. It was very successful. So as we were leaving the place, George pulls me aside and says, how did you make that happen? And I said, well, simple, George. I know that humor is unique to the culture you're in. So I went to the internet and I stole a Japanese joke and passed it off as an American one. And he looked at me and said, I had no idea, but it was funny. I said, yeah, you're Japanese. It worked. My point is that if you know where you're at and you know what the expectation is and what you're going to try and do, you may be able to pull it off. Myself, I'm very, very careful. I knew that if I told Mr. Ishii, I'm not telling you a joke, he would not have been pleased. He expected me to do better. And I did. How's that for an answer?
That's great. I think we can move on. I don't see any additional questions.
Okay, well, let's not forget, please, that humor is a new skill. It's a skill that you have to really train yourself in. You have to do things that you aren't normally doing because you know that once you've tried something with humor, you probably are going to give it again. Well, certainly. I have a whole group of speeches that I've given many, many times. Each one of them is a little bit different because the audience is different, but the thing is that I rewrite them very often. My point is, write it, rewrite it, keep working on it. Maybe one of the other ones is good. Maybe the most recent one is good or better. Don't give up on a speech. Don't just do it once because you're here in Toastmasters to learn how to be a better speaker, learn how to be a better humor provider. That's cool. Now, I like to speak a lot. Maybe you've gotten that impression. At one point, I was in a whole big bunch of clubs because it gave me a lot of opportunity to get stage time. Stage time makes it possible for you to really do a great job. Yes, I joined clubs for a reason. I want to speak. I also get a chance to hear what other people are doing. So take every opportunity you can to speak at every place that you can. Don't turn anything down. You need the practice. I can tell you that if you don't get to practice, you will get stale and you will notice it the next time you get on the stage. So not finally, but review the reactions you get from your speeches. Those slips that people give you for evaluations, keep them. I glue them down to a piece of paper, usually the backside of the agenda for that particular club. The key is that there's people who have insights that can really help you to develop your presentations better for the next time. Very important. Now, you know that you're going to grow. That's just the case in the matter. So be prepared for that. Plan for that. Think about it. Okay, that speech I gave so many years ago that was so simple and easy, all right. It was about baking bread. It was a knockoff and it worked. Today, I'd have to do it a little bit differently because our world is different. So be ready to make the changes, especially if you see something or your humor buddies tell you, hey, that ain't working. You got to drop that. Or how about trying this? They may come up with some good ideas. Another part of this is I took videos in clubs for a long, long time. Videoed the entire meeting, but I caught myself and everybody else. Why? It gave me a chance to review it and keep up on what was going on. Keep your videos. Today, with so many people with cell phones, it's just impossible not to do that. So I suggest you do that. Well, I'm getting near the conclusion. We've talked about a lot of things, but let's take a look at what we have discovered. First of all, make sure that you're adding in your humor at the correct places where it's most effective. That can be the beginning, middle, and end of your straight up speech. It really can make it go. You can use anecdotes from your personal experience. I have a great friend named Lou Stifter who came into me one day and said, you know, Ashley, you're a good speaker, but you could be a whole lot better if you just joined Toastmasters. And I did. And he just showed up in the one of those the finger spat. Hello, Lou, how you doing? My point is that use your life's experiences because they're real to you and you can create that realism. All of those Toastmaster skills you learned, every one of them is critical. Use them. Use them over and over. Develop them. Be the best that you can be. Build that humor book. Keep things that you know will work. Turn the other ones that don't upside down. Maybe you'll find a place later for them. But the point is, keep the humor book. It's very easy. My wife had a recipe book, a recipe card deck, and I got one of those for myself and did that. Very importantly, don't give up. Stay confident. Yes, they will laugh. Yes, you will be a strong humor provider. Yes, it will happen. You got this far in Toastmasters and you didn't die on stage, you won't die there. I'm telling you, that's key to it. But more often than anything else, practice, practice, practice. There's never enough practice. Boy, especially with something like musical instruments. And isn't speaking kind of like an instrument? It has to be practiced. And when you've done that, all of these things, you can be very, very happy that you are keeping them laughing. I have some resources for you. And basically, there's June Carter's book. There's Humor Uniform. You've seen those. The Toastmaster Manuals, Humor Path, which is the Humor Path. I would say go to that. And also the Advanced Manual on Humorously Speaking. So, fellow humorists, fellow speakers, make them laugh. There's not enough laughter in the world, and we need more of it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ashley. Can I just ask one more question? There are a couple more, and I'd like to just ask one more and ask for a brief response because then I'll need to move to close. I've got my eye on the time. It's a very timely question. With so many Zoom meetings, we are often muted and cannot hear audience reactions. Should we ask people to unmute during a humorous speech? How can we get feedback?
Well, you know, that's something that you need to try out. We're still Zoom work. And there's a lot to it. Yes, I like to hear the clapping. That's okay, but I like to actually hear the clapping. It's reinforcement. It's something in the back of my primitive brain saying, they love me, they love me. And we need all of that we can get. So I would say, do it, try it. Tell them, yeah, I want to hear you. I want to hear it all. I want to hear people laugh at my jokes. If I'm, you know, make sure that you get that. So my answer is yes. Don't turn a chance down to get any kind of feedback. What else?
Okay, wonderful. I think that is it. There are a lot of other comments and affirmations, people really enjoying and giving positive feedback to your presentation. So thank you again. And I'm going to move us to the close with that. I'm going to take over the screen sharing here.
Okay, thank you.
I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, and especially to Ashley for presenting. I have a couple more logistical things to go over before we close. There will be a survey that's sent out. In fact, we're going to put the link in the chat box right now. And if you could please take just a few moments, it's only 5 questions. It gives us really good information to keep improving this program. We do look at the feedback and take your suggestions. And the survey link is now in the chat box. This is the #1 question I get asked about the masterclass. Is it recorded and where's that available? The recording link will be sent out and also be available on the District 57 website. And here's the website address, d57tm.org/masterclass. If you have any questions about masterclass, please use the email address that you see on your screen. Here is the District 57 website, and under the tab that says Member Resources is the link to the page for masterclasses. Just a heads up, we have another masterclass coming very soon, in fact next Monday, on minimizing anxiety and maximizing performance, given by John Neville. This was actually going to be a conference workshop, and we have moved the conference workshops online to Masterclass since the District 57 conference was canceled. You can get registration information on that very same Masterclass page that I showed you. And just a heads up too that we have a number of Masterclasses coming up, about 4 to 5 additional ones in the next month. And all the information is on this website that you see on the screen here. And with that, I want to thank you all once again for joining us this evening. We hope to see you at another Masterclass very, very soon. Good night and have a wonderful evening.